Russell Lehmann, you are a motivational speaker and a poet who happens to have autism. It is lovely to have you back. I'm really excited.
Thank you for having me.
The last time we spoke a bit about your mom and the positive influence that she had on your life. And I was going to ask you because there's a lot of parents that we speak with and they always want advice to what can they incorporate in their children's lives or programs or sessions from a younger age. What would you say if you had to say like 2 or 3 things that you wish your parents knew when you were a kid?
It's a great question. Yeah, I think that the first thing would be kind of looking back in hindsight from where I am now as an adult. I wish they would have, and I don't say wish as in like I wish they would have done this. They were busy trying to get me help, right? So they didn't have time to do this. But I wish at least I would have known how different I am. You know, nobody had that talk. Nobody sat down with me and said, Russell, you're different. You're always going to be different, and you kind of need to prepare for that, especially as an adult, right? So, like just now, I keep finding out basically every day, just in my adult life, how differently I'm wired, how differently I think, you know, how differently I feel. So I think I would have loved to be a little bit more prepared for that. Secondly, I always say, you know, whenever you want to help somebody, regardless of if they have autism or not, but specifically with autism, those on the spectrum tend to be passionate about, you know, a few things, very passionate about a few things. And if you can weave that into kind of any therapy or supports that you're giving that child, that's going to be greatly beneficial because then they can associate support and therapy with something they enjoy, right? Because a lot of kids, especially at a young age, don't enjoy therapy. So for me, when I was younger, I was obsessed about Corvettes. I loved cars, specifically Corvettes. So if I, you know, not that it happened, but say somebody did ABA therapy with me, I would have much rather participate if it was about Corvettes, right? So same thing, you know, if you're teaching your kid how to, you know, proper hygiene skills, you know, talk about washing a Corvette if they're obsessed with a Corvette. Well, Corvette has to, you know, maintain proper hygiene too to look good. So if you can just kind of associate it with things the kid is passionate about, it makes it a lot easier on both ends.
Yeah, that's great advice. I really love the interest-based activities. We include it all the time with our kids, and it's made such a massive difference. It's actually the difference. We spoke about ABA last time we had a conversation, but the difference that I see with our kids that used to do ABA and now they're doing more holistic therapy is really the focus on interest and just giving them the input that they want. Instead of working for a while and then giving a little bit of a reinforcer at the end. So just changing that, it's a great mindset to have. Do you feel that your parents would have been more empowered if they knew these differences that you might have had since a child, which you did have since a child? Do you feel like if they knew about it and they had the knowledge of you know, what autism is, that would have made a difference?
Absolutely, absolutely. I wasn't diagnosed with autism until age 12. And, you know, if my parents knew, say, you know, maybe 6 months after I was born that I had signs of autism, we would have been 12 years ahead of the game, right? Those 12 years, the initial 12 years of my life, all three of us, my parents and myself, were spent kind of wandering in the dark, searching for answers. And that was a lot of pain, unnecessary trauma, a lot of wrong answers from doctors, a lot of medications they put on me because they didn't know why I was struggling so much. So it was a multifaceted ripple effect. It wasn't just, you know, we didn't know it was autism, so therefore we couldn't get the services needed. It was also, we didn't know Russell had autism, therefore he was subjected to services that were detrimental to him. So there's a flip side to it as well. So I think absolutely, knowledge is power. So when you have knowledge, you feel empowered, right? And I think as parents, not that I'm a parent, but parents, you have to seek out knowledge about your kid, right? And that's why I kind of have just this beef with a lot of adults on the spectrum doing the parent shaming again, is because they're hindering, like, set aside the parents for a second. Like when you hinder a parent's knowledge about autism when they have a kid on the spectrum, that damages the kid more than anything, right? So we have to really put into perspective the words we use in the autism community, how we stand for certain things, whether we're against something or for something. because in the end, it all comes down to knowledge, and that is how you indeed become empowered.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. And the more parents are going to ask, the more they're going to learn. And that could in turn decrease the amount of therapy. I honestly believe kids don't need 40 hours of therapy. I think that if parents have that knowledge and they know how to manage different situations with their kids, like you said, have those conversations from a young age. Look, you are different, that's fine. These are possible areas or environments that can trigger some kind of response. Let's help you cope through these experiences. I believe that the kids don't need to be rushed from one therapy to another. I think that parents can do a lot more within their means, and it's more natural, I believe, as well. If we jump ahead though, what you found something that you're really passionate about and you're amazing. Your spoken word poetry is really, really good. I admire the amount of words that you can remember the entire poem. I don't know how you do this. And that's maybe it's a perk of being on the spectrum. But if you jump ahead, so you found your passion and you're really good in it. But I'm assuming that there were some obstacles along the way in finding this passion. Can you share some of these that you might have had?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily obstacles in the way of finding my passion. It was rather because of the obstacles, I therefore found my passion. I think if I didn't have the obstacles in my life, I would not have stumbled onto poetry, which would have moved into spoken word poetry. My years of isolation after being diagnosed at 12, dropping out of public school, stays at different psych wards, just really struggling alone with no peer support, just support of my mom and dad. I during my teenage years, especially, I wanted friends, right? And I wanted an outlet. I wanted to vent to friends who kind of understood my life point of view, in regards to being the same age as me. And that's actually how I came upon poetry. I realized poetry could be an outlet. Poetry became that best friend I always looked for, and to be able to just kind of vent my feelings onto a piece of paper and turn those struggles into a work of art. Because that's what art is, right? Art would not exist without the human suffering. That is the impetus, the grand muse behind our artistic creativity is struggle and suffering. So I think because I encountered so much of that early on, that it was a natural conduit to me discovering the arts, specifically poetry. Because when you can really delve into something that you struggle with, um, you learn more about A, what the struggle is, but B, more about how you can overcome that struggle. So it was because of the struggle I found poetry, and then it was with poetry that I overcame that struggle.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also just what you're saying now is you had that innate need to make friends, but I believe that you're now in a space where you are able to make friends. So it just maybe took a bit longer. I think that you did really well in finding something where you can let your emotions out and you can be yourself, and you've really empowered yourself. So it's like self-advocacy really through your art.
Yeah, and arts really underscores, again, especially for those on the spectrum, that self-empowerment of being your true self. Day-to-day life, it's very difficult for me to be my true self. I'm realizing now how much I just mask my autism, whether it's at the grocery store, on a date, at a business meeting. But when I'm doing spoken word poetry, there's nothing but me. There's no mask, right? And that gives me a little a breathing room when I do my spoken word poetry. That gives me a little breathing room to be myself. It's almost like an alter ego, because this is Russell doing his spoken word performance. It's not necessarily Russell in his real day-to-day life. So that amount of space to just be able to give myself to really liberate who I am truly is very empowering. And then after, I do that on the stage on a spoken word poem, I can kind of generalize that back into my everyday life so I can get better at it there too.
Yeah, and that is extremely important, is to have that true self come out. And, like you're saying about the masking, that leads to so much anxiety. And we're seeing it with our autistic adults, is that for years of masking who they really are, and what they really crave and want, and who they want to engage with, and how they want to engage with people, with these individuals or items or whatever it is. And that is so important, that there is a time and space for you to feel fully accepted. I believe that all of us mask to an extent. I know that people on the spectrum mask a lot more, especially females, but I know that it's important to have that time, even if it's with yourself or if it is with your friends or family members, where you are just completely yourself, because that person needs to be accepted for who they are. Speaking about anxiety, I know that you're very candid in the way that you open up with your, you call it the dark side of autism, and I really appreciate that. I think that's needed, and it's not really spoken about that often. But in terms of anxiety and depression, we spoke a little bit earlier, which is not in this conversation, but you just moved to LA 4 months ago, and you were saying that it was quite a stressful move. I don't know if you wanted to speak about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, these past 4 months in LA, I've literally experienced I've had more social experiences here in the past 4 months than I had in my prior 30 years of life.
Wow.
I'm having pretty much every day, I'm encountering something that I have never encountered in life, that most people honestly encounter on a day-to-day basis. I realize I am still so isolated that it's astonishing to me, like, just the little things, being invited to a barbecue, right? Having somebody wave at me at the grocery store. Like, I'm experiencing these things more frequently, and that is amazing. At the same time, like, this is the first time in my adult life that I can say I have friends. Like, honestly, like, that's only in the past 4 months can I say I have friends. And while again, that is a beautiful thing, I'm realizing how many nuances and ambiguities there are behind socializing and the hidden rules of society. I was not expecting that, and I'm finding out again. It's there's always a ricochet of sorts of pleasant things and unpleasant things, but it always leads to growth, because the pleasant thing for me is I have friends. The unpleasant thing is realizing now for the first time in my life how differently I do indeed think and process things. But then that leads to growth, right? Because I'm learning about myself. So I'm realizing that I'm a very literal thinker, which has unfortunately gotten me, I'm a sensitive guy. It's really hurt me in many ways here in LA, because I take people, when they say they're going to do something, no matter how small it is, I just believe it. I picture it's going to happen. That's how I process. So when people don't do that, I get hurt. So they're just a lot of, it's almost like a death by a million cuts, but it's so worth it, because I'm living the life I've always dreamed of. I'm struggling probably more than ever, but the reward is more than ever as well. So, let's keep that perspective.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of anxiety and depression, I don't even like using the word anxiety, because it's used so commonly that people just think of it feeling nervous. No, like, anxiety is absolutely paralyzing. I don't know if you've experienced, just being paralyzed in bed in the fetal position when you wake up, shaking, sweating, and that's my kind of anxiety. So when I tell people I have anxiety, I kind of like to use the word panic more, just because it's like a living hell, and there's no way to get out of it. You just kind of have to sit with it and accept that you're in hell, and there's really nothing you can do about it. Surrender control of the universe, and just wait it out. But that's, again, the ricochet of that is you develop perseverance, and that's a good thing in the long run. So it's I just want to remind people out there listening, if they struggle with anxiety or depression, which is an altogether different monster, or OCD, it's going to really hurt in the short run. It will be really painful. But if you can really look inward during those times and realize that you all are always persevering through them, it will develop your self-confidence down the road in the long run.
It's beautifully said. It's kind of like a bittersweet way of opening up about this, because it really is like that. It's always, you're always growing, but it's painful to grow. I mean, remember when we were kids and we felt those growing pains? I'm quite tall, so I felt like my bones were literally breaking. But an emotional growth is very difficult to deal with on a daily basis. So all these different changes, it must feel quite paralyzing and overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
What are things that you do to get through those moments? Like you said with the anxiety, and I really appreciate that tip, because sometimes if somebody is going through an anxiety attack or a panic attack, it is good to just know that you don't have to push yourself through anything. You can just lie there and just accept that it feels crap and it will pass at some point. I mean, take note of your breathing patterns, but try and just know that it is going to pass if you persevere. But what would you say are some of the things that you're incorporating now, if anything, that is helping you to go through all of these new experiences that you're feeling or experiencing daily?
I think as much as I need alone time and that time to rejuvenate, I also need a hell of a lot more interaction. I've woken up with severe anxiety pretty much past 10 days. So waking up today, I'm like, I wanted to cancel this, right? Because I was just so freaking anxious. But I am now integrating the realization that once I get on this call, I will feel better. I need human interaction in order to feel better, in order to pull myself out of that state of mind. So as difficult as it is, especially when nothing is scheduled, like if I didn't have this scheduled today, I probably would have had less anxiety, but nothing would have pulled me out of it, right? Okay. But I woke up with more anxiety because I knew I had this schedule. But hey, the more anxiety, because this was scheduled, when I went through with it, it pulled me out of the anxiety, right? So it's interesting that even though I felt more anxiety because of this meeting ultimately helped me. Whereas if this meeting wasn't scheduled, I probably would have felt less anxiety, but that anxiety would have stayed constant throughout the day, if not gotten worse. So number one is I know I need human interaction. And interaction, not even interaction, just going to a park where there are people helps. Just getting around people. I don't have to interact with them. Number two is, I'm a big cannabis user. And I think if I can get that altered state of mind, that different perspective, that will pull me out of, because I feel like my brain is often a rigid cage, right? So I'm always in this rigid, just kind of rusty cage that I've been in my whole life. And in that cage with me is OCD, depression, and anxiety. And what cannabis does, it kind of loosens the bars of those rigid cage. So if I can't get out, at least I can push some of the symptoms out. And again, it kind of gives me more room to process what I'm feeling. And sometimes I just go on autopilot and do what I need to do without thinking. Because thinking, when you have anxiety, when you have depression, when you have OCD, thinking is the number one thing you should not do. That is not good.
I often get so over involved with my work that I would choose to not even go out once in the day to walk the dog, because I know that there's 100 things that I need to do in it, and it's kind of like that anxiety where it's like, if I don't do it now, then what is going to happen? Then it's going to be more and more things are piling on top of it. But as soon as you just stop thinking for a second and you just go out, and like you said, you don't have to interact with anyone. You just walk past a person and you're already feeling, okay, I can do this. And you're feeling like you're getting stronger with every step, which you are physically and also mentally and emotionally. So that's very important.
It is. And the most difficult step is that first one out the door, right? And I think, prior to yesterday, I hadn't left my house in 72 hours. And I didn't have any meetings. So I was just in my head for 72 hours, like with that anxiety. And but yesterday I went for a walk, and just going for a walk in my neighborhood in California. It was beautiful, seeing the sun out, the foliage. And then, sure enough, this is kind of the synchronicity I've been experiencing here is I passed Ray Bradbury's old house. He was the author of Fahrenheit 411. Passed his old house, and there was a plaque outside commemorating him. And they had a quote of his, and it said, don't think. I was like,
What?
that was so apropos. It's like I stood and just looked at that plaque for like 10 minutes, just reading
Oh,
don't think over and over and over.
that's
And that happened
awesome.
yesterday. And it's the universe kind of opening up because I
Mm,
put myself out there, literally and metaphorically, by going for a walk. I saw that plaque and it was kind of like the universe felt like it was saying to me, "Hey, Russell, I got you. I got
I
you.
got you.
You
Yes.
try, I will meet you halfway."
Mm, that's a great thing. Do you sometimes feel, because I can relate so well with this, do you sometimes feel that if you set yourself a task, that it's easier to go out? So, for example, if you say, okay, I just need to go and buy bread, or I just need to go out because I need to do this one task. Is it easier for yourself to go out rather than saying, I need to get out? And then you're overthinking, why do I need to get out? What am I doing outside? How long am I staying outside? Do you feel like that could help?
That is again one of the huge things I'm learning here in LA is I don't want to say I can't, but it is extremely almost impossible for me to leave the house unless there is a concrete, logical reason behind doing it.
Mm.
So, for instance, it is very hard for me to just go for a walk because I usually turn that into a 9 mile run. And the logical reason behind that is I'm outside because I need to exercise. I can't go for a walk because if the logical reason is for me to feel better, that's not concrete enough for me to actually go for a walk. I need a concrete reason behind why I'm doing something. If I have a business meeting downtown, I can get there. That's concrete, right?
Yeah.
3 o'clock, gotta be at this place, meet with this person, I can get there. But if I go to a coffee shop, spontaneously wake up this morning and say, hey, at 3 o'clock, I'm gonna go to a coffee shop, not concrete enough because why am I going there? I could do all that work here in my home, right?
Okay.
So there has to be a very concrete, logical, literal reason behind why I do things. I've never gone for a joyride. Always wanted to just kind of go for a drive at night, listen to music, especially in California, drive along the beach, right? I have yet to be able to do it because my brain cannot function unless I have a more concrete reason. I'd be in my car and I'd be thinking, well, why am I here wasting my gas money? It would take away from the joy of just looking at the beach, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be a concrete thing. So I can meet people, I can do things, but it has to be really concrete. Even grocery shopping, right? It's not like, I have like one banana left. I eat bananas all the time. I should probably go get more bananas. But I probably can't do that unless I'm absolutely out of bananas because that's concrete as to say, I don't have bananas here, so I have to go to the store. I'm not going to go now because I still have one left. So it's very complex in how I think, and I'm realizing that's going to be a monster to deal with. Obviously, I'll get better at it because I'm just realizing it now, but I really need to practice just doing things simply for the sake of doing things because right now, that is very difficult for me to do. I need a reason to do things. And if I don't see a reason, I just feel like it's not worth the stress it causes me to go do it.
What if you tell yourself that the reason is that you're working on decreasing anxiety in the long run? So you're actually telling yourself what the concept is that you're wanting to work on. So you want to work on being more flexible in a way so that you can decrease your anxiety with changes, with upcoming changes or transitions.
And I think that's the difficult part because you just said the word, right? It's a concept. I can't process a concept. I can think about a concept. I can philosophize about a concept, but to be able to do something because it might help with something else is very difficult for me to implement into my executive functioning. If you were to tell me, say I need to lose 5 pounds, so the doctor said I need to go for a walk every day. That's physical, so I could have that picture in my head that if I went for a walk for a day, it will help me and I will see the benefits. But that's not so much a concept as a fact that it will help. Now going out, it probably is a fact that it will help with my anxiety, but I can't grab onto that because it's invisible. I won't be able to see the results, right? Be able to feel the results, but I am a very visual person, and I think in pictures. There's that Temple Grandin book, right? Thinking in Pictures. That was one of her first books. I think in pictures. So unless it's really something I can picture, I honestly, it's like it just doesn't compute in my head, and I just sit on the couch literally like a robot who became unplugged. It's very bizarre. But again, it's that's why I would wish I would have realized how different, because I'm just realizing all this in the last 4 months. So it's almost like a journey of self-discovery, but at the same time, I'm going to be honest, there are days where I don't like the way I am. You know, it's very complicated. It is very nuanced. It's I don't even know what I'm doing half the time, let alone how to get out of what I'm doing or to go further on with what I'm doing. So self-discovery is overwhelming. It's difficult to accept, but it is what it is. And, you know, having talks like this where I can just verbalize and kind of think out loud definitely helps in the processing. And, you know, every day we get better. So I know that is a fact. It always will be. So got to continue on.
Yeah, all of those things are important that you just said, because I definitely think it is the last 4 months has exaggerated it, you know, has made it a lot worse, because there are so many social situations, like you said, that you have to deal with. And now the self-discovery and the self-awareness that you're focusing on is so good. But this has been your whole life that you're kind of dealing with all of this right now, and it's highlighted. So it's kind of under a magnifying glass too. And I get what you're saying, because my partner would say the same thing. I would say, I need to have more energy. I'm going to eat some fruits, or I'm going to eat a chocolate. And he would say, chocolate's not good for you. You should rather eat this. But he likes the facts and he likes research. So if you're going to tell him, oh, I'm going to do this because of that, it should make sense. So it's exactly what you said. You can't say, oh, I need to decrease anxiety, so I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to work on the concept of decreasing anxiety, because there is no research article that he read that said you can work on the, you know, anxiety by doing a few different things here and there. I mean, it's like, what? Yeah. That doesn't make any sense.
It's like running a program on a computer without installing the program first.
Yes.
Right? We need the information. We like show us the science, the facts, the data. Maybe then we can go do it. You got to upload the program into us.
We should be teaching our younger kids in that way, because otherwise nothing is going to make sense when they're kids, and they're going to get frustrated and probably anxious and perhaps depressed later. So we're going to have to teach the way that our kids learn. And for some, that is a visual thinker. Some really need that visual input, and other kids need more of a systematic approach. I guess it's similar to the visual thinkers too. But really, and some people only learn through like forms of art. So we just need to really sit with our younger kids more and establish how do they learn best. But I am feeling sorry that everything is kind of like piling up now with you, because you're so focused on growth and development. And I just feel like I want to help in some way more, but that's just my personality coming up.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, you're helping, just, you know, again, interacting with you right now is helping. And obviously your support these last few months has been tremendous. I think, you know, I honestly think, you know, I probably struggle so much because it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Do I struggle so much because I want to grow so much and I am so self-aware that I start to ruminate? Or is it because I struggle so much that I became self-aware, right? So they go hand in hand, right? And I think if you can just, again, have that equilibrium between, you know, maybe approaching the rabbit hole, but not necessarily going all the way down the rabbit hole, just kind of being at peace with looking down the rabbit hole without jumping in. I think we can learn a lot about ourselves, and at the same time kind of minimize the stress that self-growth incurs, right? You know, you said it, you know, everything comes into being through strife. That's been known for thousands of years. The universe started off with a huge explosion, right? Everything comes into its own through some kind of struggle. So it's just a fact of nature, and the fact that I can have this kind of platform, just talk about it openly, whether it's here or in a presentation or on social media, that helps a lot too. You know, just letting people know that they're not alone, but in turn reminding myself that I'm not alone either.
Yeah, that's great. And again, I'm also an overthinker, so I hope you're not angry if I call you out on this, but that is also overthinking about it when you say, like, which one happened first? Like, am I pushing the self-growth, or is the self-growth pushing me? Most people would just go with it. They're just like, I'm growing. But I also do the same thing. I'm like, well, that this happened because I was doing too much of that or too little of this. And it's like, does it really matter? But it does. For somebody that overthinks, it does matter. And that is important to know that you shouldn't worry that you're overthinking, because I know that's something that I do as well. I'm like, well, now I'm overthinking.
You overthink that you're overthinking.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. And it's like 3 a.m. sitting there and you're like, why am I still thinking about overthinking? But I do think that the important thing here, the important point, is to know that your growth is going to happen no matter what. And you can think that statement, but that is something that I've seen for the amount of time that I've known you, because you're so open about it and you're still talking about it, and that is going to push you to be more accepting of your new environment and the way that people are interacting in the new environment.
I agree. Yeah, and most importantly, right, finding out more about who I truly am, ultimately does, if I can just be with it and accept it for what it is, it'll come to self-acceptance as well, which I think everybody on this planet is trying to achieve, is self-acceptance, right?
Exactly. And self-growth, I don't think a lot of people are actually actively engaged in that sometimes. I think that they're kind of just going on autopilot. So it is a difficult process to be so aware of what is happening in yourself and your thoughts and feelings and emotions the whole time. So I commend you on that you are sitting with it and you're telling yourself, okay, I am feeling anxious, or I'm feeling depressed, or I'm feeling lonely, but that's fine, or overwhelmed with the amount of people that are wanting to interact. It's something that I'm going to work through, but it's okay to feel like that. That's the big thing, I think, is just to honor those feelings and to give it the space that it needs, to respect it.
Yeah, I definitely, there's so much resistance we have to certain feelings and thoughts, that we at times can think that we are accepting these feelings when we're still subconsciously fighting them. So it definitely takes a lot of practice. And but yeah, I encourage everybody listening to, some form of mindfulness or Zen meditation is the best way to counter the intellect. The intellect is great. It can also be a double-edged sword, because it will lead to overthinking and rumination. So if we can balance the intellect with mindfulness, that, I think, the equilibrium between those two is the sweet spot to acceptance and personal growth as well.
That's definitely important, as mindfulness. And I've got one client that refuses to do meditation because he says he's not a hippie. And I was telling him, well, he needs to listen to Sam Harris. The way that Sam Harris explains meditation is a lot more, it makes sense. It's not just, like weird songs. It actually, he speaks about it from a scientific point of view, and it really makes sense. I say a lot of your quotes in some of the other interviews that I have, because I love the way that you share openly what you feel, not just about autism, but also the way that autistic adults are speaking about autism, and parents and professionals. But is there anything that you want to share with parents or with autistic kids or adults that they can do to kind of focus more on decreasing anxiety, or not decreasing anxiety, I don't want to say that, to focus more on self-development and be okay with all these feelings that you might be feeling?
Good question. I think I'm still learning. I think we're all still trying to figure that out. And I don't think anybody will ever get it figured out, or they're going to be, the next Buddha or something, right? I think all you have to do is try. Just try. I think every day when you wake up, whether you're a parent to a kid on the spectrum, whether you're a kid on the spectrum, whether you're an adult on the spectrum, you're going to face a lot of challenges every single day. Are you going to try? You probably will, because I think, I believe the only true failure lies in not trying. If you try and it doesn't work out, that's not a failure, because at least you tried, right? And so I think that's all we can do is have a goal. Maybe it's learning to be curious about my anxiety for 5 minutes, right? Maybe that's the goal. And then just try it. Set a timer for 5 minutes next time you're anxious. Sit with it. Maybe wonder why you're anxious. What are you missing? Big picture, small picture, whatever you can do in those 5 minutes. And then just go on with your day, right? I think, again, we don't want to overthink so much about how do we either defeat anxiety or even overthink about how do we sit with it, because that will, and subconsciously, feed the anxiety, right? When we ask how, that usually feeds anxiety. When we ask why, that can feed anxiety. So it's not so much about really trying to achieve the goals as much as just trying, right? It doesn't matter if we achieve the goals. We will grow as long as we try. And some days it's okay not to try. I also want to preach, kind of just self-love, self-care, self-kindness. It is okay to be in your bed, cancel your meetings, watch TV, binge eat, and cry. Your body feels like it needs that for a reason. It's not just doing that because it wants to mess with you.
Exactly.
Your body, always listen to your body. Listen to your body, listen to your mind. Oftentimes we try to control our bodies and control our minds, but they're the ones in control. And if we can realize that we're just along for the journey, I think it takes a lot of burden off our shoulders to realize that we don't have control. And that is very liberating in some sense, that, what can we do about it as long as, again, just wake up and try.
Yeah, I love that, because again, my partner would say, I would tell him, oh, I'm going to take a nap, but I'm going to feel so guilty because I'm really tired. And he said, well, your body is saying that you need a nap. You should take a nap. It's so simple to him. It's so simple because he sees it like that. That's like, he sees the system. And it's exactly what you said. It's like, we're not in control. We aren't actually, you can't control these emotions or physiological needs. If you're feeling anxious, you can't say, okay, switch it off. I mean, that's just impossible. What you can do is say, I'm okay, I'm still breathing, I'm all right. Yes, I'm feeling anxious. This is going to pass. I can lie down. I can do whatever I want in that moment. Or, like you said, don't think about going out, just go out. Just go for that walk, even if it's just a 2-minute walk outside and go back, because that would ultimately try and push you to see people around you and feel the air or breathe the air, and then you are going to feel better innately.
And it's about baby steps too, right? This morning, again, until yesterday I didn't leave the house for a few days, but this morning it's a beautiful day here, and although I didn't feel like sitting on my porch because I was too anxious, baby step, open the door, poke my head out, 5 seconds, close the door. Like, I felt good about that. It looked like kind of a comedy skit, but I was proud of sticking my head out of the door.
Yes, and you should be.
So it's all about baby steps, right? And I think going back to listening to our bodies know more than we'll ever know. Think about it. Like, we know how to breathe, we know how to blink, we know how to pump blood through our heart, but we didn't teach it that. Our body already knew that. Our body taught us how to live rather than us teaching our body how to live. So if we can, again, realize that our body and our mind is in control a lot of the time, we can be nicer to it, because oftentimes why we get mad at ourselves is thinking we're in control and then wondering why it's not working, right? We're not in control, so then we won't wonder why it's not working. It's going back to mindfulness and just seeing things as they are.
Exactly. I love that. I think I'm going to stop right there. Thank you so much for all your wisdom, as always. Was there anything else that you wanted to share?
We oftentimes, deep down, no matter how lost we feel in life, we know what we want, and we know what we want to do, and we know why we're here. I made a post the other day. Confidence is ingrained within us. We all have the same amount of confidence. The reason why it kind of seems to fluctuate on face value is the amount of self-doubt we have. So confidence is like a flower in a garden. It's this beautiful flower. We all have it. Doubt is the weeds of the garden. Some of us have a lot of self-doubt, covers up the flower. Too many weeds covers up the flower. So as long as we can peel away the layers of self-doubt and realize that that is what we want in life, that is who we want to be, that is how we want to grow, that confidence, that flower, beautiful flower in the garden will become more apparent. So just trust yourself, no matter how lost you feel. Only way to ever really find yourself is to at one point become lost.
That's awesome. My colleague is a clinical psychologist, Ben Truter, and he always tells me that we need to start thinking it back to the little us, so the little Carla or the small Russell, and that is our true selves. And if we can just remember who we were when we were kids and honor that person and kind of support and comfort that person, then I think the weeds will go away faster.
Absolutely. I have been doing a lot of work on that myself, just kind of realizing that young Russell is always with me. And, a lot of what I feel today is the manifestation of that younger Russell. So we really need to look back at our past, because our past does dictate our future. It really does. So as long we don't want to ignore it, we want to look at it, we don't want to ruminate about it, overthink it. We just want to look at the past and see, yeah, I've been through a lot. We've all been through a lot. Life is freaking brutal, right? But we're still here. We're still trying, and we can take our younger selves' hands and just enjoy this journey together.
Yeah, and some days it's fine not to be perfectly happy. It's actually fine not to be perfectly happy most days. Absolutely. It's kind of strange to be perfectly happy.
Yeah, I've never understood the contradiction in society where a smile is good, but for some reason a frown is bad. I don't get that. All emotions are just emotions, right? None are good, none are bad. They're all gonna come and go.
Yeah,